Sarah Mitchell never imagined that one impulsive decision would completely transform her life. At 28, she had everything planned out. She worked as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm in Chicago, lived in a cozy apartment overlooking the city skyline, and had been saving diligently for her dream of opening her own consultancy firm. Her life was organized, predictable, and entirely under her control. That Friday evening in March started like any other. Her best friend Emma had been begging her to attend a charity gala at the Hilton downtown. Sarah had resisted for weeks, preferring quiet evenings with her books and Netflix to crowded social events. But Emma was persistent, and Sarah finally gave in when she learned the event was raising funds for children's education in underprivileged communities. She wore her favorite black cocktail dress, the one that made her feel confident without trying too hard. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and she applied just enough makeup to enhance her green eyes. Looking in the mirror, she hardly recognized the sophisticated woman staring back at her. Usually, she preferred jeans and comfortable sweaters. The ballroom was magnificent, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over elegantly dressed guests. Sarah felt out of place among the city's elite, clutching her champagne glass like a lifeline. Emma had disappeared into the crowd within minutes, leaving Sarah to navigate the sea of strangers alone. That's when she saw him. Alexander Chen stood near the grand windows, engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with several older gentlemen. Even from across the room, his presence was commanding. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored tuxedo, he had an air of quiet authority that drew her attention. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and when he smiled at something one of the men said, Sarah noticed how it transformed his serious features. Their eyes met across the crowded room. It was like something out of a movie, the kind of moment Sarah had always scoffed at in romantic films. But there was no denying the electric jolt that passed through her when he looked at her. He excused himself from his group and walked toward her with purpose, never breaking eye contact. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," he said when he reached her, his voice deep and warm with amusement. His slight accent hinted at international origins. Sarah laughed, surprised by his directness. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way," Alexander admitted, glancing around the opulent room. "These events are necessary for business, but I find them exhausting." They talked for hours, finding a quiet corner away from the main crowd. Sarah learned that Alexander was 32, a venture capitalist who split his time between Chicago, New York, and Hong Kong. He had grown up in San Francisco, the son of Chinese immigrants who had built a successful import business from nothing. Despite his obvious wealth and success, he spoke with humility about his achievements and genuine interest about her life. Sarah found herself opening up in ways she never did with strangers. She told him about her small-town upbringing in Iowa, her scholarship to Northwestern University, and her dreams of entrepreneurship. Alexander listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own experiences of building his career. As the evening wore on, the crowd began to thin. Emma had long since left with other friends, sending Sarah a text filled with winking emojis when she spotted her deep in conversation with Alexander. The band was playing slower songs now, and couples swayed on the dance floor. "Would you like to dance?" Alexander asked, extending his hand. Sarah hesitated. She wasn't much of a dancer, but something about the way he looked at her made her want to say yes to everything. His hand was warm and strong as he led her to the dance floor. They moved together easily, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. "I don't usually do this," Sarah whispered as they swayed to the music. "Do what?" Alexander asked, though his knowing smile suggested he understood. "Any of this. Coming to fancy parties, dancing with strangers, feeling like—" She trailed off, embarrassed by her own boldness. "Feeling like what?" He pulled her slightly closer, his cologne subtle but intoxicating. "Like I've known you forever," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. The chemistry between them was undeniable. When Alexander suggested they leave the gala and go somewhere quieter to continue talking, Sarah found herself agreeing without hesitation. This wasn't like her at all. She was cautious by nature, always thinking 3 steps ahead, but something about this night, This man made her want to throw caution to the wind. They went to his penthouse apartment in the Gold Coast district. The view was breathtaking, city lights twinkling like stars below them. Alexander opened a bottle of wine, and they sat on his terrace despite the cool March air, wrapped in soft blankets, talking about everything and nothing. "I have to go to Hong Kong next week," Alexander said as the night grew later. "I'll be gone for 3 months, maybe longer. There's a major acquisition my firm is handling." Sarah felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "That's exciting," she said, trying to sound casual. "Is it?" He looked at her intently. "Right now it just feels like terrible timing." The air between them crackled with tension. When Alexander leaned in to kiss her, Sarah met him halfway. The kiss was electric, passionate. Everything a first kiss should be. One kiss led to another, and another, until they were both breathless. "Stay," Alexander whispered against her lips. "Just tonight." Sarah knew she should leave. This wasn't part of her plan. She didn't do one-night stands or impulsive decisions, but looking into his dark eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands on her face, she couldn't bring herself to say no. For once, in her carefully controlled life, she wanted to do something spontaneous, something just for her. The night they spent together was magical. They made love with a passion Sarah had never experienced before, as if trying to capture a lifetime of moments in a few short hours. Between intimate moments, they talked, laughed, and shared secrets in the darkness. Alexander told her about his fear of ending up like his father, successful but always absent. Sarah admitted her terror of taking risks, of stepping outside her comfort zone. "You took a risk tonight," Alexander pointed out, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Maybe I'm braver than I thought," Sarah replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. As dawn broke over the city, they lay entwined, neither wanting to acknowledge that their time was running out. Alexander had an early flight to New York before heading to Hong Kong. Sarah had a presentation at work she couldn't miss. "I want to see you again," Alexander said as Sarah dressed in the soft morning light. "When I get back from Hong Kong," Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. They exchanged numbers, shared one last lingering kiss, and then she was in a taxi heading home, feeling like she had left a piece of herself behind. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Alexander texted occasionally from Hong Kong, but the time difference and his demanding schedule made real communication difficult. Their messages grew shorter and less frequent. Sarah threw herself into work, trying not to think about that magical night, or wonder if it had meant as much to him as it had to her. Then everything changed. 6 weeks after the gala, Sarah woke up feeling nauseous. She attributed it to stress and the questionable sushi she'd had for dinner. But when the nausea persisted for days, accompanied by extreme fatigue and tender breasts, a terrible suspicion began to form. The pregnancy test felt heavy in her hands as she waited for the results. 2 pink lines appeared almost immediately. Positive. Sarah stared at it in shock, then took 3 more tests, all with the same result. This couldn't be happening. They had been careful. She was on birth control, but no method was 100% effective, as the small print always warned. Sarah sat on her bathroom floor, mind racing. She was pregnant. With Alexander Chen's baby, a man she had spent one night with, who was currently on the other side of the world, who might not even remember her name. Her carefully planned life was crumbling around her. She tried calling Alexander, but got voicemail. She sent a text asking him to call her when he had a chance. That it was important. Days passed with no response. Either he was too busy or, Sarah feared, he had written off their night together as a pleasant but meaningless encounter. Alone and scared, Sarah made an appointment with her doctor. She needed to know her options, needed to think clearly about what to do next. The rational part of her brain presented the logical choices. She was single, focused on her career, completely unprepared for motherhood. But another part of her, a part that surprised her with its fierceness, already felt protective of the tiny life growing inside her. Dr. Martinez was kind and professional, reviewing Sarah's options without judgment. She ordered blood work and scheduled an ultrasound for the following week. "Take your time making any decisions," she advised. "This is a lot to process." Sarah went through the motions of her daily life, all while grappling with the biggest decision she had ever faced. She couldn't bring herself to tell anyone, not even Emma. The secret felt too big, too overwhelming to share. At night, she lay awake thinking about Alexander, wondering what he would say if he knew. Would he want to be involved? Would he think she was trying to trap him? The questions tormented her. The day of the ultrasound arrived. Sarah lay on the examination table, gel cold on her belly, watching the monitor anxiously. The technician was quiet for a long moment, then called the doctor in. Sarah's heart raced. Was something wrong with the baby? Dr. Martinez studied the screen carefully, then turned to Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Sarah, I need to tell you something that might come as a shock. You're not carrying one baby." "Twins?" Sarah whispered, her mind already reeling at the thought. The doctor shook her head gently. "Triplets. You're pregnant with triplets." The room spun. Triplets. 3 babies. Sarah couldn't breathe. This had to be some kind of mistake. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was supposed to be planning her business launch, not preparing for 3 babies. "This is very rare, especially with spontaneous conception," Dr. Martinez explained. "Multiple pregnancies carry higher risks. You'll need specialized care, more frequent monitoring. And Sarah, I need to be honest with you about the challenges ahead." The doctor went on to explain the risks of carrying triplets, the likelihood of bed rest, premature delivery, and the astronomical costs of raising 3 children simultaneously. Each word felt like a hammer blow to Sarah's carefully constructed life plans. Sarah left the hospital in a daze. 3 babies. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. She sat in her car in the parking garage, finally allowing the tears to fall. How had one night of passion led to this? How would she manage? Her savings, meant for her business, would barely cover the medical costs. Her 2-bedroom apartment could never accommodate 3 babies. Her job, with its demanding hours and frequent travel, would be impossible to maintain. She tried Alexander again, leaving a voicemail this time. "Alexander, it's Sarah. From the gala. I really need to speak with you. Please call me as soon as you can. It's urgent." Her voice cracked on the last word. More days passed with no response. Sarah began to accept that she was truly alone in this. Whatever connection she had felt with Alexander that night had been one-sided, or at least not strong enough to warrant a return phone call. She had to make decisions based on the assumption that she would be raising these babies alone. Sarah finally confided in Emma, who came over immediately with ice cream and tissues. "Triplets? Triplets?" Emma repeated in shock after Sarah had explained everything. "Sarah, honey, what are you going to do?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I really don't know." Emma held her while she cried, then helped her make lists. Always practical. Sarah needed to see everything written down. The financial implications were staggering. Medical care, 3 cribs, 3 car seats. Formula if she couldn't breastfeed all 3. Diapers, clothes. Eventually childcare so she could work. The numbers made her head spin. "Have you considered other options?" Emma asked gently. Sarah had. She'd researched adoption, even contacted an agency. There were families who specifically wanted to adopt multiples. The babies could have a good life, parents who were prepared, who had planned for children. It would be the rational choice. But every time she placed her hand on her still flat stomach, imagining 3 tiny hearts beating inside her, she couldn't imagine giving them up. These were her babies, created in a moment of unexpected passion. Maybe, but hers nonetheless. The fierce protectiveness she felt surprised her. "I'm keeping them," Sarah heard herself say, the decision crystallizing as she spoke. "I don't know how I'll manage, but I'm keeping them." Emma hugged her tightly. "Then I'll help however I can. You won't be alone in this. I promise." Sarah threw herself into preparation mode. If she was going to do this, she would do it right. She researched everything about triplet pregnancies, joined online support groups for mothers of multiples, started looking for a larger apartment in a more affordable neighborhood. She met with her HR department to understand her maternity leave options and began saving every penny possible. The pregnancy progressed rapidly. By the end of the first trimester, Sarah was already showing significantly. The morning sickness was brutal, lasting all day and requiring medication to control. She was exhausted constantly, her body working overtime to support 3 growing babies. Her doctor monitored her closely, concerned about her blood pressure and the strain on her body. Sarah's carefully controlled life became a series of doctor appointments, prenatal vitamins, and preparation. She had to tell her boss about the pregnancy when she could no longer hide her expanding belly. The conversation was awkward, her boss clearly concerned about how her absence would affect their major accounts. Still no word from Alexander. Sarah had stopped trying to contact him after leaving several messages. Pride and hurt feelings made her delete his number. If he wanted nothing to do with her or their children, then she would manage without him. Women had been raising children alone for centuries. She would figure it out. But late at night, when she felt the first flutter of movement inside her, she couldn't help but think of him. Did he ever think of their night together? Would he care that 3 little lives had been created from their passion? She placed her hands on her growing belly, whispering to her babies that they were loved. They were wanted, even if their father didn't know they existed. The second trimester brought new challenges. Sarah's body expanded rapidly, and simple tasks became difficult. Her doctor ordered her to reduce her work hours, concerned about the strain. Her ankles swelled, her back ached constantly, and she could barely sleep. The babies seemed to take turns being active, ensuring she was always aware of their presence. During a routine appointment at 24 weeks, her doctor detected signs of early labor. Sarah was immediately hospitalized and put on strict bed rest. The next few days were terrifying as doctors worked to stop the contractions and keep the babies inside as long as possible. Every day they stayed in the womb increased their chances of survival and health. Lying in the hospital bed, monitors tracking 3 heartbeats, Sarah felt the full weight of her situation. She was alone, facing the very real possibility that her babies would arrive dangerously early. The NICU doctors came to discuss what to expect with extremely premature triplets. The statistics were sobering. Emma visited daily, bringing books and magazines, trying to keep Sarah's spirits up. Her parents flew in from Iowa, her mother clucking disapprovingly about the situation but rallying to support her daughter. Sarah hadn't told them about Alexander. Simply saying the father wasn't involved. It was easier than explaining the truth. The medications worked, and the contractions stopped. Sarah was discharged but ordered to remain on bed rest at home. Her mother moved in temporarily to help, cooking meals and ensuring Sarah stayed horizontal. It was during this enforced stillness that Sarah felt the baby's personalities emerging. Baby A was the most active, constantly kicking and shifting. Baby B seemed calmer, moving in gentle waves. Baby C was positioned against her spine. Movements felt more as pressure than kicks. Sarah read to them, played classical music, told them about the world they would enter. She described their nursery, still being set up by Emma and her mother. 3 cribs in soft yellow. Waiting. She told them about their strong grandmother, their fun Aunt Emma, the life she was trying to build for them. At 30 weeks, the contractions returned with a vengeance. This time, there was no stopping them. Sarah was rushed to the hospital as her water broke in the taxi. Terror and excitement warred within her. It was too early, but she was about to meet her babies. The delivery room was crowded with medical personnel. 3 NICU teams stood ready, 1 for each baby. Sarah's mother held one hand, Emma the other. As the contractions intensified, she had wanted a natural birth but accepted the epidural gratefully when the pain became overwhelming. "You're doing great, Sarah," her doctor encouraged. Baby A is ready to make an entrance. The first baby arrived at 11:47 p.m., a tiny but perfect boy with a strong cry that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. 2 minutes later, his brother followed, smaller but equally vocal. The third baby, a girl, required more assistance. the doctors working to turn her into position. At 11:52 p.m., Sarah's daughter entered the world, silent at first until the doctors cleared her airways. Her cry was the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. 3 babies, 2 boys and a girl, all alive, all hers. She got only glimpses of them before they were whisked away to the NICU. The next hours blurred together. Delivering the placenta, being stitched up, the exhaustion hitting her like a tidal wave. But underneath it all was a fierce joy. She had done it. They were here. The NICU became Sarah's second home. Her babies, so tiny in their incubators, fought for every breath. They were on ventilators, feeding tubes, looking more like tiny birds than human babies, but they were fighters, all 3 of them. Sarah pumped breast milk around the clock, held them skin to skin when allowed, sang softly to them through the incubator walls. She named them while sitting vigil in the NICU. The eldest boy became James, after her grandfather. His brother was christened William, a strong name for a tiny fighter. Her daughter she named Lily, delicate but resilient. Days turned into weeks in the NICU. James grew strongest, fastest, breathing on his own within 2 weeks. William struggled more, his lungs needing extra support. Lily, the smallest, faced the most challenges, including a heart murmur that required monitoring. Sarah lived for the moments she could hold them, feeling their tiny bodies against her chest, their heartbeats syncing with hers. The hospital bills mounted astronomically. Even with insurance, the costs were staggering. Sarah's savings evaporated quickly. She applied for aid programs, swallowed her pride to accept help from charities. Her parents contributed what they could, but they were retired on a fixed income. The financial stress added to the emotional strain of having 3 fragile babies fighting for their lives. It was during one particularly difficult night, when Lily had taken a turn for the worse, that Sarah found herself thinking about Alexander again. Their children were fighting for their lives, and he didn't even know they existed. Part of her was angry at his silence, but mostly she just felt sad. He was missing so much. Their first smiles, the way James gripped her finger with surprising strength, William's peaceful expression when he slept, Lily's determined spirit despite her tiny size. After 2 months in the NICU, the babies were finally strong enough to come home. The discharge process was overwhelming. Car seat tests for 3 babies, learning to manage their medications and monitor their breathing, setting up oxygen support for Lily, who still needed help occasionally. Sarah's apartment looked like a medical supply store. That first night home was terrifying. Sarah sat in the nursery, watching 3 babies sleep, afraid to close her eyes in case something went wrong. They were so small still. Just over 4 pounds each. The responsibility was crushing. How would she do this alone? But she wasn't entirely alone. Emma had taken time off work to help. Sarah's mother extended her stay. A neighbor she barely knew knocked on the door with a casserole and an offer to help with laundry. Slowly, a support system formed around her, drawn by the remarkable story of the single mother with triplets. The days blurred together in a haze of feedings, diaper changes, and cat naps. Sarah developed a complex system of schedules and charts to track who had eaten what, who needed medication when. She became an expert at holding 2 babies while bottle feeding a third. Her body ached constantly from the physical demands, but she pushed through, driven by love and determination. When the babies were 4 months old, Sarah returned to work part-time. The childcare costs for triplets were astronomical, eating up most of her salary, but she needed to maintain her career for their future. She pumped milk in the office bathroom, rushed home at lunch to see them, lived in a constant state of exhaustion. It was during this chaotic period that everything changed again. Sarah was grocery shopping, all 3 babies strapped into an enormous triple stroller, when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Sarah?" She turned, and there was Alexander Chen, looking exactly as she remembered, standing in the cereal aisle of her neighborhood grocery store. His eyes moved from her face to the stroller, widening in shock as he took in 3 pairs of dark eyes that looked remarkably like his own. "Hello, Alexander," Sarah managed, her heart pounding. "I tried to call you." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Shoppers moved around them, oblivious to the drama unfolding. James chose that moment to start crying, setting off a chain reaction with his siblings. As Sarah moved to soothe them, she saw Alexander's face transform from shock to something she couldn't quite read. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Sarah looked at him. This man who had unknowingly changed her entire life, then down at their 3 children. "Yes," she agreed. "We do." The coffee shop around the corner from the grocery store was nearly empty on this Tuesday afternoon. Sarah mechanically prepared 3 bottles while Alexander sat across from her, his eyes never leaving the babies. Emma had rushed over to help, taking the triplets for a walk to give Sarah and Alexander privacy to talk. "Triplets," Alexander said for the 3rd time, as if saying it might make it more real. His usually composed demeanor was completely shattered. "And they're mine?" Sarah's exhaustion morphed into anger. "Of course they're yours. Did you think I made a habit of one-night stands? That night with you was..." She stopped herself, not wanting to reveal how special it had been when he had clearly moved on without a backward glance. "Sarah, I never got your messages," Alexander said urgently. "My phone was stolen in Hong Kong 2 days after I arrived. By the time I got a new one, your number was gone. I tried to find you, but I only knew your first name and that you worked in marketing somewhere in Chicago. Do you know how many Sarahs work in marketing in this city?" Sarah stared at him, processing this information. All these months of thinking he had deliberately ignored her, and it had been a stolen phone? "You tried to find me?" "For weeks," Alexander admitted. "I even went back to the hotel, hoping they had a guest list from the gala. But they couldn't release that information. I've thought about you every day since that night, and now..." He gestured helplessly toward the window where Emma was walking with the stroller. "How old are they?" "No, 4 months," Sarah said quietly. "Born at 30 weeks. They spent 2 months in the NICU." Alexander's face paled. "You went through all of that alone?" "I wasn't alone," Sarah said defensively. "I had Emma, my mother, friends. We managed. But I should have been there," Alexander said fiercely. "They're my children. You're the mother of my children. And I wasn't there when you needed me." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that was achingly familiar. "Tell me everything. Please. I need to know everything." So Sarah told him. The shock of discovering she was pregnant, the terror of learning it was triplets, the bed rest, the early delivery, the long nights in the NICU. She showed him pictures on her phone, the babies in their incubators, tiny and fragile, their first time being held. Coming home, Alexander studied each photo intently, his expressions cycling through wonder, regret, and something that looked like grief. "Their names?" he asked softly. "James Alexander, William Chen, and Lily Grace," Sarah said, watching his reaction to the middle names she'd given them. "I wanted them to have a connection to you, even if I was never in their lives," Alexander finished. He was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, I know I have no right to ask this, but I want to be in their lives. In all of your lives. I've missed so much already." Sarah had imagined this conversation countless times, but the reality was more complicated than her fantasies. "It's not that simple, Alexander. We don't know each other. Not really. One night doesn't make a relationship, and I've built a life for them. Routines. Schedules. You can't just walk in and disrupt everything." "I'm not asking to disrupt anything," Alexander said carefully. "I'm asking for a chance to be their father, to support you, to help." "Sarah, you said the NICU bills were overwhelming. Please, let me help with that at least." Pride warred with practicality in Sarah's mind. She had maxed out credit cards, depleted her savings, borrowed from her retirement fund. The financial strain was crushing. "I don't want your money," she said, even as she knew she needed it. "It's not my money, it's theirs," Alexander countered. "They're my children too." I have a responsibility to them. Please, let me start making up for the time I've lost." Emma returned with the babies then, James fussing for his bottle. Without asking, Alexander reached for him, cradling the baby with surprising confidence. James stopped crying immediately, staring up at his father with wide, curious eyes. The resemblance between them was undeniable. The same dark eyes, the same shaped nose. "He looks like my baby pictures," Alexander said wonderingly. He looked up at Sarah with tears in his eyes. "I have 3 children. How is this real?" Over the next weeks, they established a tentative routine. Alexander came by every evening after work, helping with feedings and bath time. He was a natural, with the babies, gentle and patient. He read to them in Mandarin and English, sang soft lullabies his mother had sung to him. The triplets responded to him immediately, as if recognizing him on some primal level. Sarah found herself softening toward him despite her reservations. This wasn't the carefree man from the gala, but someone deeper, more complex. She learned about his childhood, his driven perfectionist father and gentle mother, his struggles to balance family expectations with his own dreams. He learned about her father's death when she was in college, how it had made her determined to be independent, to never rely on anyone else. "I relied on you, though," Sarah admitted one evening, as they sat on her couch, babies finally asleep. "That night, I let my guard down completely." "So did I," Alexander said softly. "I've never connected with anyone the way I did with you. These months, not being able to find you, it's been torture." The attraction between them was still there, simmering beneath the surface of their careful co-parenting relationship. Sometimes their hands would touch during a baby handoff, and Sarah would feel that same electric jolt from the gala. But she held back, afraid of complicating things further. The babies had to come first. Alexander threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to his business deals. He researched triplet development, bought every parenting book available, baby-proofed his penthouse. He hired a night nurse to help Sarah get more sleep, though she initially resisted what felt like charity. "You're exhausted," he said firmly when she protested. "The babies need you healthy. This isn't charity, it's practicality." The night nurse was a godsend, allowing Sarah her first full night's sleep in months. She woke feeling human again, able to think clearly for the first time since the birth. With clarity came the realization that she and Alexander needed to formalize their arrangement. Custody, child support, visitation, all the unromantic realities of co-parenting. Alexander surprised her by suggesting they see a family counselor first. "Before we involve lawyers, let's figure out what's best for the children," he said. "I don't want to be a weekend father. I want to be fully involved in their lives." The counseling sessions were intense, forcing them to confront not just practical issues but emotional ones. Their night together had created not just 3 babies but a complex web of feelings neither had fully processed. The counselor helped them navigate their communication, establish boundaries, and focus on the children's needs. It was during one of these sessions that Sarah finally voiced her deepest fear. "I'm terrified you'll try to take them from me. You have money, resources, lawyers. I'm just a single mother struggling to make ends meet." Alexander looked stricken. "Sarah, no. Never. You're their mother. You carried them, delivered them, kept them alive when I didn't even know they existed. I would never try to take them from you. I just want to be part of their lives, of your lives." Slowly, trust built between them. Alexander proved his commitment daily, never missing a promised visit, handling midnight feedings without complaint, learning each baby's unique personality. James was bold and demanding, always the first to cry but also the first to laugh. William was the observer, studying the world with serious dark eyes. Lily was the charmer, quick to smile, though still the most fragile. 6 months passed in a blur of developmental milestones and deepening bonds. The triplets were thriving, catching up to their adjusted age expectations. Sarah had returned to work full-time, with a nanny Alexander insisted on paying for. Their co-parenting arrangement was working better than she had dared hope. Then everything changed in an instant. It started with a phone call on a regular Thursday evening. Alexander was at Sarah's apartment, helping with dinner and bedtime routine. His phone rang, and he stepped onto the balcony to take it, his expression serious. Sarah could see him through the glass door, his body language becoming increasingly tense. When he came back inside, his face was grim. "I have to go to Hong Kong immediately. There's been a crisis with the acquisition. The deal is falling apart. And there are some complications." "How long?" Sarah asked, her heart sinking. The babies had grown so attached to him. They looked for him every evening, lighting up when he arrived. "I don't know. A week, maybe 2. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. The deal in Hong Kong, it's not just business. There are some people involved who... they're not good people. I've been trying to extricate my firm from their influence, but it's complicated." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What kind of people?" "The kind who don't take no for an answer," Alexander said quietly. "I've kept you and the babies out of it. But I need you to be careful while I'm gone. I'm going to leave security here, just as a precaution." "Security?" Sarah's voice rose, causing Lily to stir in her crib. "Alexander, what have you gotten involved in?" He took her hands, his own cold. "Nothing by choice. When I was in Hong Kong last year, we partnered with what we thought was a legitimate investment group. We discovered too late that they were a front for money laundering. I've been working with the FBI to untangle it all, but these people don't know that. They think I'm just being difficult about the deal." Sarah pulled her hands away, mind reeling. "The FBI? Money laundering? And you're just telling me this now, when our children could be in danger?" "They're not in danger," Alexander said urgently. "These people don't know about you or the babies. I've made sure of that. The security is just a precaution, I promise. I would never put you at risk." But Sarah was already moving to the nursery, checking on the sleeping triplets. Her protective instincts were in overdrive. "You need to leave," she said without looking at him. "Go to Hong Kong. Fix your mess. But don't come back here until it's safe." "Sarah, please." "No." She turned to face him, anger and fear warring in her chest. "You don't get to walk into our lives, make us depend on you, and then reveal that you're involved with dangerous criminals. I have 3 babies to protect." Alexander looked devastated. "I'm trying to protect them too. That's why I'm going. To end this once and for all." "The FBI, I don't care about the FBI," Sarah interrupted. "I care about my children. Leave, Alexander. Now." He left, but not before arranging for discreet security to watch Sarah's building. She discovered them the next day. 2 men in a dark sedan parked across the street. It should have made her feel safer, but instead, it made the threat feel more real. The next days were tense. Sarah went through the motions of her routine, but she was hypervigilant, checking locks obsessively, startling at every unexpected sound. The babies sensed her anxiety, becoming fussier than usual. They missed Alexander too, James especially vocal in his displeasure at the disrupted routine. Alexander called and texted, but Sarah didn't respond. She was too angry, too scared, too overwhelmed by the realization that her children's father had brought danger into their lives. She had trusted him, let him in, and now she wondered if that had been a terrible mistake. On the 4th night after Alexander left, Sarah was awakened by a sound. Living with 3 babies had made her a light sleeper, attuned to every cry or movement. But this was different. This came from the living room, heart pounding. She grabbed her phone and the baseball bat she kept beside her bed. Moving silently, she peered around the corner. A shadow moved across the window. Someone was on her balcony, trying to force the sliding door. Sarah dialed 911, whispering her address and the situation. Then she moved to the nursery, standing guard over the cribs, bat raised, ready to defend her children with her life if necessary. The sliding door gave way with a soft pop. Footsteps entered her apartment. Sarah's whole body shook with adrenaline and fear. But she planted herself firmly between the intruder and her babies. "Police are on the way," she called out, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Leave now." A man appeared in the nursery doorway, dressed in black, his face obscured by a ski mask. He was larger than her, stronger, but Sarah didn't care. She swung the bat with all her might,